Okay, it's Thursday, July 9th, 2020, 5:30 p.m. We are convening the meeting of the Natrona County Parks Advisory Board. We'll start out with a roll call here. Let's start over here.
Jim Miller.
Tina Cruz.
Roy Buck.
Dave North.
Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. First thing we would like to do, we have the flag here. We'll stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So there was some discussion here. We have not received a final opinion. For reasons that'll become apparent in a few minutes here, we do not have meeting minutes from written meeting minutes from the June 11th meeting, but we do have the YouTube video, so I will ask if the board members had a chance to review the YouTube video of the meeting, and if so, do we feel comfortable approving the minutes that way?
Well, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and approve them.
Okay,
I second.
okay. So motion is made to approve the minutes as recorded on video, and we will attempt to get a written copy of those that we can post online. But any discussion? We'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving the June 11th, 2020 meeting minutes?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay. And we will get that cleared up with Eric Nelson when he's back. So we have a change in our county structure. Tim Petria is no longer with the County Parks Department, is no longer the County Parks Director, and Mike Higler has assumed the responsibilities of the oversight of the county parks until further notice. And so with that said, I will turn the floor over to Mike Higler, and he can give us our updates for the mountain and lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll start with the mountain update. The mountain water well system, it's been turned off, and the drilling of a new well has been placed on hold. And that's being driven by the issues that we have with the trail center. The campgrounds are not being served with water at this time, and that relates to that well and some violations that we had on it. We are under discussion with the DEQ and the EPA and to modify the existing well, take care of some of the original issues they had with that well, and bring it back online. If that all works well, then we can continue service to the lodge area, and but that won't include the campgrounds. Signage, Mr. Petria had reached out to RDG Planning, who was also hired by the city of Casper to do wayfinding signing. And we had a meeting with them some time ago, and they were going to give us a proposal. We don't have that proposal yet, so we've got to call into them, and hopefully can work that out to where we can look at the kiosks and the appropriate placement of the signs and kiosk and that whole gamut of signing on the parkland on the mountain. And I've got some examples in your packet. These are just examples of kiosks. You guys might take a look at those and see if you think about which way we want to go there. There's a lot of them you can come up with. So if there's something that sticks out there, we can look further into it. Biathlon venue, it has received its new vaulted two-stall toilet, men and women's. That's in place and is operational. Item 4, the Trail Center maze area, there's also a new vaulted toilet there. It's not quite operational yet, we're still putting some fill around it, but the latter part of next week, it should be totally ready to be used. And so that takes care of that one. Some people had issues with that because we had to close it because we had it set above the ground for snowfall, and so it was a little difficult to get into, and then in the winter it'll be perfect, but in the summer it had to have a ramp built to it, so we were in the process of doing that. Rotary Park Bridle Trail construction, notice of award was issued to 383 Construction on June 29th. We are waiting the documents that they have to get back to us, their insurance and any issues that they have with the drawings. We haven't received those back yet. He'll advise of his construction schedule as soon as the documents have been received. There again, the bid on that was $81,500. The engineering and construction management was $21,400, and that's being performed by Worthington Ledhart. So we've also reached out to another company, a trail design specialist, and we've gotten some comments back from them relating to trail building in general up there at the Bridle Trail. I will remind you that when Worthington took that project on, the direction was to follow the existing trail. And we're going to take another look a little bit outside the box and look at what would happen if we didn't follow the existing trail, if we could get the grades any different to come closer to being compliant with some of the guidelines for trails. And so that's in the works. Ponderosa Shelter spoke with Mr. Ginsbach Construction on July 1st, finalized the configuration of the windows and doors that were going to go in that structure, and he anticipated starting construction on it in the next 2 weeks, and then he's going to coordinate with the road and bridge to make sure we've got the road in good enough shape that he can get it in there. Depending on whether it rains between now and the time he gets ready to do it, that road can get kind of ugly. Bear Trap Meadow Shelters, we've discussed temporarily repairing the roof and masonry features. Again, I have a handout in your packet that shows some pictures of that. The roofs are going to get a moderate treatment of tar paper, which is what's on there now. And the rock features are going to be secured and or repaired where they've been coming off, and we'll make those last the rest of this year and through the winter with the intent of removing those structures and putting new structures in next year, next spring. And also along those lines, we've received a quote from another company that's looking at doing the geotechnical and civil engineering of a proposed building that we may choose. We haven't done the choosing of the building yet to replace those, but we're going to come up with some models and go from there. And in your minutes, that proposal was $17,850. That was only for one structure. We're going to do 3. So that price has changed to $24,300 to have the architect look at that.
24,000.
300.
And that's per structure or?
No, that'd be for all 3. That'd
Okay.
be for all 3. And they'd be about 20 by 40 footprint wise. I mean, that's what he's designing around that price. I guess we can decide whether that's the footprint we want to stay with or not in the future, but
Does that include the tear down?
no, doesn't include the tear down. And I doubt there's any asbestos, but it doesn't include asbestos removal and that type of thing. But it'd be design and bid out of new structures. And we expect to have a public comment period for people to look at probably what we choose, a couple different ideas.
Did that include a new pad, or are we building
It's
on?
probably going to include the new pad because, we looked at the pads we have, one of them spalted and they aren't ADA compliant. So anything we build now has to be, so that's going to change the use of those pads unless you want to put ramps and retrofit. And I guess I wouldn't suggest that at this point. If you're going with new buildings, you might as well contour it to a whole new layout on the ground and not have to deal with all that retrofit. And item 8, Central Wyoming Trails Association update.
I've got,
Have more on that,
I'll
Roy?
tell you what, if you want
Skip that?
to, yeah, we can skip that until the end of your
Okay,
updates, and then we can come back to that.
okay. Pathfinder Alcove update, road maintenance out there. Contract was signed with the county and Worthington-Lenhart to design the roads through the cabins, Black Beach and Cottonwood. Site review was conducted in December of 19. Final design was sent to the BOR in May for their review and NEPA approval, and we are waiting their final approval at this point. And we anticipate that project going out to bid soon and completing by November 1st. It won't take very long, but due to the camping that's going on right now and everybody's in the cabin areas, it'd be a little difficult to do it. So it's going to all work out pretty good, I think. The bathhouse and the dock that the sheriff's office was working on, that request was approved by the BOR to locate just east of the Alcove Marina. And the facility, we understood it would serve the sheriff and game and fish offices. Approval was granted for the exploration, digging, and drilling, and that was accomplished. And I think the building's going to go forward for engineering and design. If there's anything different on that, Bart will correct me.
It sounds like that's where they're at. I think they're
Okay.
doing the final design and see when they start.
And I think I said bathhouse, I meant boathouse. The drone flight, we actually had a meeting today with the BOR on that. That was the aerial flight that looked at all the features at the lake and cabins and the trailers and various locations, boat club, ski club. Data was collected and given to the BOR, and they've reviewed it and have found some, I wouldn't call them errors in the data, but the way the data comes across, it's garbled. And so we've got to figure that out with CEPI provided that, and we're going to work with them to straighten that out and get it to where it's usable. It's one of those things between ArcGIS and AutoCAD. The two don't talk quite right, and so when they transferred it over, some of the files are corrupted, I think is the best way to say it. So we have to get that figured out. And that will be used to look at things that are going on out there that shouldn't be going on out there. And you can't believe the pictures. I mean, there's no doubt you know what's there. That drone did an amazing flight. And so we're going to use that way into the future for looking at all kinds of issues at the facilities. The lights at Pathfinder Boat Ramp, planned to install 3 solar lights on poles, was submitted to the BOR. They came back with recommendations for a less intense light. So the contractor is trying to find a light that's solar powered and less intensity for, we don't have any rules in planning and zoning for that, but the BOR does. So we have to follow their guidelines on this one. So that slowed that project down.
Mike, what are their requirements on that on?
Well, I don't remember exactly the lumens that we submitted, but I think it was like, if I remember right, it was like 300 lumens less than what we turned in. And so we're trying to find a light that'll function as well as the one that they proposed. And just where we're at. Site modification process and guidelines, we have received the draft of that. I think you folks have seen that in its original form. DOR has made a few modifications, and we're making some comments back on that right now, and then we'll come out with a final. When we get our comments made, I'll probably submit it back through the board. Jason Gutierrez is looking at it, I'm looking at it, and they're minor, really, some of the things we've got, but it's just, some of it's just some wording. And basically that, the way it's written right now, the BOR would look at everything that's over $1,000 improvement of any type. That's a significant change from the past. Full hookup bathhouse. Haas Construction started that. The foundation's poured. It's waiting to be cured out. I think they're going to start tomorrow putting backfill around it. They're supposed to pave out there on the 27th of July, all the full hookups, the new ones that we put in last year. And right now they're on track, so it's looking good. The master plan approval, the Casper Water Ski Club, Alcove Marina, and Casper Boat Club are still awaiting their master plan approvals from the BOR. I think one of those never even got over there. So I'm working on that. The water sewer and system, as you know, there was a failure of the auto SCADA system, which is a computer-aided system that tells us what's going on with the pumps in the water system, as well as the lift stations, sewage lift stations. And we had a failure of part of the data transmission link that didn't allow the pump to come on. And so we had that on June 21st, and crews were dispatched to, we thought we had a water leak because we had no water in the tank. But actually it was all this system that didn't fill the tank, and that's been repaired. Serves 155 trailers and 22 full hookups, and of course the ski club, boat club, and the Alcova Marina, plus the public in all our overnight camping. So that's repaired. We haven't had any more problems. Backup water operator, as you know, when we lost our operator, we took Mr. Gillingham off the mountain, who's also a water sewer operator, and he's running the lake now as well as the mountain. But by law, we have to have a backup, so we contracted with WG3, which is Bill Mixer, and he's a licensed water and sewer. So he's our backup right now. And I don't have this on your agenda, but I was going to have Bart Olson step up with the sheriff's office and give a little report of what they dealt with out at the lake over the 4th. Bart?
Come on up.
Can I ask you a quick question, Mike?
Sure.
Have we any plans to look at any of the ramps in Alcova this year, since the water levels are going to be so much lower?
Well, Alcove is not an issue. Pathfinder, if the water gets down, the ramp at the marina up there is terrible.
Yeah.
And however, this next year, we've got it scheduled to do engineering on a new project like we did at Okie Beach there. Now, we'll have no way of knowing if the lake will be down to where you can do it. But it'll get designed and engineered, and then when we can do it, it'll happen. But the campgrounds and everything up there are going to get reconfigured as part of that boat ramp, much like what we did at Okie Beach, if any of you have seen it. And so it'll look like a cookie cutter of that, pretty much.
Okay.
But that lake's tough to deal with because we don't know when it's going to be up or down. I mean, it just is fluctuant, depending on what goes on downstream for demand.
Yeah.
Whereas Alcova has to stay at a height because it's an irrigation lake. And so they have to keep it up. But now this winter, they're going to take it down, I think, 20 feet
Right.
to work on the dam.
That's what I was getting at, is because they're going to take it down if we were going to inspect anything and
Well,
see if we needed to repair anything.
yeah,
while
we
had it
will.
down.
Most of the boat ramps that I know of around Alcova are in pretty good shape, but the one at Pathfinder's not. None of them at Pathfinder are great.
On the one, I had one person talked about the one at Fremont and said the end is starting to have a pretty good drop off.
Yeah, we could probably take care of that
That'd
one.
be easy to look at during the winter months when the water's gone from that one. But nobody else has been complaining about the shape of the docks or anything around Alcova that I'm aware of from what people tell us. I guess I ran off a log of the calls that we had the 3rd through the 6th. So we had 60-plus calls for Alcova, Pathfinder area, and you kind of name it. Looks like we only had a couple of fireworks calls, a couple 911s, some loud musics, citizens' complaints. I'd say overall, I expected that we would probably have more people out there than we did. I think we had a busy 4th of July weekend, busier than some of the past years, but I don't think it was a record by any means. Typical stuff in some of the campgrounds. We had people arguing over campsites, and we're like, well, it's all a public area, and it's a busy weekend. We have to do what we can to share it, and worked out a few of those issues. But we had some of those calls with people complaining that other people were encroaching on their campsites, and that's going to happen until there's defined camp spaces. There was one fight at the marina that a few injuries reported on that. Mike asked me about a fire down in the cabin area. It was reported that it was started by fireworks, never located anybody with the fireworks, and it was small enough that they put it out with a fire extinguisher and disregarded fire service. There was an arrest. The same individual was arrested twice. He was having a dispute over people encroaching on his campsite. We stopped by the first time there, got things worked out. He agreed he wasn't going to be the parking police and that they would all share the space in Westside Campground. And then he started fighting with the neighboring camp and telling them where they should park, and got in a physical altercation with those guys. Ended up going to jail, was trespassed, and was rearrested about 9 o'clock the next morning for trespassing, because he started all over again when he got back about where people were parking and stuff. So,
Learned the first time.
Game and Fish, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 arrests that they made for boating under the influence. Not very many citations written, several warnings, mostly like generators. We had one gentleman that happens to us, but this is kind of an example. Sometimes I think it's important to tell you guys about like what happens and what you guys are hearing. We had one gentleman complain about a generator. We stopped and explained to him that the person was going to run the generator because they had a CPAP machine and he was allowed to run it overnight. Actually, it was everybody else was headed in. Deputy Legler headed home, got undressed and got in bed, and then they called him for a party of over 20, 25 people that were up partying. He got there and was like, there is no party. So he called the RP back and said, I'm not locating this party. And he said, I just called and said that there was a loud party out here because I knew you guys had come. I just want the generator shut off. So sometimes that happens to us where people report things that aren't necessarily true that are going on to try and get a reaction. So I think it doesn't happen often, but sometimes I think it's worth kind of verifying something that you guys might hear. And that's a good example of where like we go through the campgrounds and like they're like, these people were up all night long and there was just chaos out here. And then you go down and talk to other people and they're like, we didn't hear any of that going on. So you kind of got to wade through some of what you hear, I guess is the point that I'm making. We had 6 to 7 people on starting that were specifically dedicated to the lakes at 10 in the morning, and then we stayed until most people went to bed, so we were getting home around 3 in the morning. So we ran a crew of 6 to 7 in those off hours when somebody wasn't dedicated to the lake area. The town crews would come out, and they did have to come out and take care of a couple of small things. On the mountain, I know Mike mentioned just the lakes, but we had 28 in that same time period, 28 calls on the mountain. Some readies, looks like a couple more fireworks calls, a few loud musics, but overall they said it went pretty smooth up on the mountain. Talking to Dave, he said it was busy, but there was still campsites and stuff available up there. And just because of COVID and things that have been going on and the amount of people that have been getting out and about, we really kind of expected it to be full all the way. And he said there was actually some sites that were still left up there, so it was kind of a surprise to us. But nothing major to report up there for the mountain. Any questions for me? Okay. And then up on the mountain, we ran 4 people full-time during that time period for the weekend.
No, I don't have any questions, but I would like to say, just generally, we appreciate having you here at the meetings. Appreciate what you do. I don't think you get enough credit for the job you have to do, and I'd just like to put it on the record that thank you for your service, and we appreciate having you in the county and here at our meetings. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Do we have any other questions for Mike? I had one as far as the water system at the lake. Did we have any issues with like communication to people? Do people out there understand what's going on as far as the water system and the issues?
Well, when we lost the water, yeah, everybody called
Few
on that.
calls.
Yeah, we don't lack for communication then. But no, everybody understands what was going on once they saw us out there working on it. I mean, a lot of people thought we had a leak. We thought we had a leak, but that wasn't the case.
Well, Mike, is there a summary of the lodge situation on what the engineers came up with?
We are waiting the insurance adjuster's report. We haven't got that back.
Okay,
We're-
either the engineer or the insurance.
Right. We had, they told us about 2 weeks, and we'd hear something, so it's almost been that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then, so we'll jump back to
8.
Central Wyoming Trails Association. So this is an item I asked to be put on the agenda. I had a conversation with Ben Smith and Tia Leshin about Central Wyoming Trails Association that is wanted to open some line of communication and talk about potential summer projects. And I would ask if you would like to come up and just talk about that a bit.
How's it going? My name's Ben Smith. Like Roy said, I'm with the Central Wyoming Trails Alliance. Mostly we just wanted to, we reached out to Roy to kind of just start talking about, we haven't really built on the mountain much. We kind of tried to shift our focus into town a little bit more the last couple of years and hit some road bumps with that, and we just want to build trails. So trying to figure out what we got to do to start getting some new stuff built up on the mountain. We're looking at kind of the biathlon area. Not so much the biathlon area, but continuing the trails that are from the top of Eadsville there around to the kind of skirting the perimeter of the McMurray area. I think would be an easy way to add a lot of miles, kind of reduce congestion that we're starting to see up there, and give people a little way to get out a little bit more instead of being right there in the cluster of everything. Kind of make it feel a little more open, a little more mountainy, and laying down the lines will be pretty easy. We got people that are willing to do the work, and everything we build is all compliant with the International Mountain Bicycling Association. And they're a mountain bike group, but they design, or they've written books on building these trails, and they're meant to be multi-use trails, so they can be enjoyed by everyone. The big thing is they're watching the grades and the water runoff and everything to keep those trails consistent and sustainable and very low maintenance. So, I'll be kind of communicating with Roy what we're looking at for hoping to get done there, but we hope to just get your guys' approval and help us move forward. So, you guys have any questions?
questions for Ben?
I guess my question would be, Ben, is we've talked about it before, and I've talked to you about it before, is I don't think we have any problems with building trails. We just would like to see some sort of a 1, 3, 5-year plan of what that all looks like.
Right.
Whether it's on the mountain or at the lake or
Right.
whatever. And that's what we're kind of interested in, instead of just having people go up there and build a trail and say, here it is.
Right, and, we're working on getting more organized with that sort of thing too, and some of that came down to lack of communication with the former parks directors and stuff like that, between our organization and their organization, and, so that's what we're really hoping to build, is that communication again, so we can work together and everyone can be on the same page, so.
But just, in my conversation, I had a conversation with Ben and Tia the other day, and we actually have a map of the perimeter trail, which would basically skirt around the 160-acre McMurray area that surrounds the biathlon shooting area. And that's about, I don't know, that was probably done 3 years ago or so.
And kind of just laid to rest after that, and.
Yeah,
never
so
really
it
moved
just,
anywhere, so.
it's been around, and I'll distribute that to everybody so you can see it.
And I am working on coming up with kind of some more proposals, but, we just wanted to get that dialogue going again, and if we need to make plans for years ahead and stuff like that, we can work on that, so.
Yeah, and I think that's, that would be the biggest concern, is just not having random trails built, that we are working on a plan
Mhm.
that would probably be, like Jim said, a 3 or 5-year plan, so that we've got, everybody's on the same page.
Right.
So it sounds like that's where you're at, and that's where we're at. And I just tell you, from my opinion, is if we can get, the sooner we can get that plan, I think the sooner that we can get started with some boots on the ground.
Cool.
So,
I think, I like if you're gonna do it in phases, or, to do it in phases, or, and I think it would be good to have the map, so we
Mhm.
could see, we can see that, and
Mhm.
maybe tackle one part at a time.
Right,
over the-
yep, and I can put all that together for you guys, so.
I think we need to stretch it out even a little further than 5 years. Mainly because, just like a lot of the stuff that we had planned this year, obviously isn't going to happen. In our climate that we have today, I would like to actually see something all the way out to a 10-year plan, a 1, 3, and 5, and 10-year plan. For a couple of reasons. One, I want to make sure that whatever we do, that we have access across whatever properties we're doing, so we don't have to worry about that in the future. And that's something that sometimes takes a little bit of time. And so, that's one of the big things. And then I know you guys are building things correctly, so I'm not, and I appreciate what you guys have done up there. You guys have done a lot of stuff. And I would like to see some other places other than just, around the biathlon club. I'd like to see some stuff that's further east down Ponderosa Park.
Right.
I'd like to see some stuff up by the archery range back in that area off the backside. There's a lot of phenomenal areas
Mhm.
that, if we have that in a long-term plan where we can work on it and move forward, then you can take a little bit at a time, and we can actually design things and get everything set correctly before we jump into it. And that way you don't get halfway through it or started on it and then have to stop.
Right.
That doesn't do anybody any good when
Mhm.
when you start that, because everybody gets excited and then suddenly you have to quit doing it for whatever reason.
Right.
And, then everybody kind of loses their motivation, and it's like, So that's my reasoning for that, is I'd just like to see us make sure that we have everything laid out.
Mhm.
And, we've got a lot of potential up there, a lot of access, a lot of areas that we can do things, and I just want to make sure that we have it all lined out before we start moving forward too far.
Mhm.
one question I have, how many people do you have enrolled in your club?
Oh, I'm not sure as far as like the actual members. We have 9 board members currently as our board of directors. It's been a while since I looked at the stats. Last I knew, it was probably around 40 members that were still paying active memberships. And, you know, the last time we were doing any kind of building, we were having about 15 people or so, I'd say, show up on a regular basis to build and stuff like that. So a lot of our members are just pay the membership and do the thing, and not much to it but that. But we have lost a little bit of interest since we haven't been getting much done the last couple of years. So that's part of the reason we want to get going again. So
Yeah, I get that.
Are you the chairman now of
I
the
am.
board?
I'm the president, yep. Any other questions?
For Ben? Thank you very much for coming up. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for your time, guys.
Yep. And then just as a FYI, Commissioner Kaufman has been listening in. She's out of town right now, but she's listening on the phone. So I would ask if Commissioner Kaufman, if you are listening right now, do you have any questions or comments on anything that we've talked about so far?
No, I'm happy to see Central Iowa residents there, and I think we have an opportunity for a stronger relationship with that organization. One of the things that we're doing is texting Eric and say, like legally, how does that work if to add trails? So I'm curious about that process. I don't know, I can't speak to it, but I just want to make sure that I ask so that we understand it as we do it. But obviously, we all know that trails have an opportunity to drive economic impact and development and quality of life and all that stuff. So I'm glad they're in the room, and I'm glad the conversation's happening, and we'll see what Eric says. I'm just curious about how that needs to go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and as far as discussion topics, parks rules and regulations, as far as I know, and Commissioner Kaufman may be able to add something to this, but that has been submitted from the Parks Advisory Board to the Board of County Commissioners, and I'm not sure where that is in the process. And Commissioner Kaufman, do you have any idea as far as where we're at with the parks rules and regulations?
So I will follow up. I know that looking at the agenda for the next several times that we meet work sessions or regular meetings, I have not yet seen it on an agenda. So I will follow up with that, Roy, and I'll email the Parks Board. So I apologize for that. We've had a lot on our plate. That's no excuse. So let me get you guys an answer.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything to add to that, Mike?
No, I don't.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I think it's in their court, so. As far as proposals and permits, do we have, I understand we had kind of a backlog of permits, or?
Yeah, there's a majority of them are at the lake for decks and different various things that there's a lot of follow-up to be done on some of them, and I'm working with Jason Gutierrez because they end up down at his office to see which ones have actually been completed and inspected, and we'll get those out of the way, and then we can concentrate on the ones that are still pending.
So what does our permit process look like right now? What is the workflow? If somebody wanted to do an addition or refurbish a deck or something like that, what would that process look like right now?
Right now, they're able to submit those requests anytime. We're thinking right now of looking at modifying that to where requests come in, say, this isn't set in concrete yet, but say they come in August 15th. That gives us time to deal with them going through the winter months. It gives the Bureau time to deal with them. And then it should realistically give us time to get answers back before the water comes up if they're going to deal with the dock situation. That's what's critical. Versus them coming in all through the summer, it puts a load on the planning and zoning, the inspections that they have to do on their normal duties, for homes and commercial construction. So we think if we do this window, it'll help us all to have everything in, looked at, and back out. Now, there are no guarantees that, if it goes to the Bureau and has issues over there, that it would be out. But you can't put a deadline on it really, but you could put a submittal time where they come in. And most of them turn around pretty good, but if it has to deal with in the bottom of the lake or moving dirt, there has to be NEPA, cultural, Corps of Engineers studies, that kind of shipwrecks things for a little bit, but there aren't as many of those as there are decks and modifications. And then, of course, your septic and water is dealt with by the health department, but we still get involved. And there's modifications of that go on out there. But most of it's at the lake. I mean, we don't have any of that really on the mountain.
Well, I understand, but Mr. Petrea had kind of changed the process to where before the applications would come to us and then we would sign off and then it would go to the Bureau to Jason Gutierrez or wherever. What does that process look like now? When the application comes in, does it come into you?
It's going to come into our office. However, the new guideline from the Bureau requires it to go down to planning because it didn't make any sense, and I agree with this, for the Parks Board to approve it. Then it went to planning and they couldn't approve it. And then we're back to the Parks Board as, well, you guys approved it. And then it goes back to planning, gets a rubber stamp there, and goes over to the Bureau, and it doesn't get approved. So the process now, they come in through the Parks Director, go to planning. Planning will look at it, decide whether they're going to issue any kind of permit. And if they have to kick it back, and they will, because if it's over $1,000, it still has to go to the Bureau. And then once the Bureau stamps it, the person can go down and actually pull a permit, construction, whatever it is, a plumbing, whatever, from Jason. And so basically ours is, at the Parks Department head level is just going to be to facilitate the application and get it over to planning.
Okay.
And then it'll follow the course back through the Bureau. If it's denied, we'll notify the people. They won't be pulling any permit from planning to do anything. So.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board? Okay, we'll move on to Section 8, public comments. I'd like to remind everybody that, just keep your comments reasonable and respectful, and other than that, would welcome anybody from the public who'd like to come up and speak. Please give us your name and address and proceed.
Hi, my name is Douglas Irvin. My address is 6835 South Rotary Park Road. I've just got a couple of questions for the board, and I'd like to start off with when can we expect the county to communicate their plan and vision for the Parks Department? Since we've had 2 directors in 6 months, and there's been zilch communicated to the public about any reasons why, and it kind of leaves us up in the air. And we know Mike has 2 hats he's wearing now, and he's doing an awesome job, but we'd like to know, is that the permanent plan? Is it a temporary plan? And what's the county doing to, if their plan is to get a parks director at some time, what they're going to do to ensure that we attract and retain the talent we need to make sure our parks get the attention they need. Other comments would be for the lodge insurance. Do we know if we're going to be subject to a time frame like we were with Ponderosa, where it was 7 years before we got any insurance money? And with regards to the mountain amenities, we've run into a couple of situations like at Crimson Dawn and now with the well situation where amenities are decreasing, and we haven't heard any discussions about whether there's a long-term plan to replace those amenities or whether there might be some discussion as, do we need to budget the investment now so that the well system, for example, can support the campgrounds again. That kind of long-term planning hasn't been communicated and come across well. And I know I'm not the only mountain user that's concerned about a trend in decreasing amenities. We lost the cistern at Crimson Dawn. We lost the caretaker shelter due to negligent maintenance. Now we're losing water at the campgrounds on the mountain. And just seems to be a decreasing curve there. And I'd also like to find out if anything has been done about the fire pits at Rotary Park yet. We had discussed those previously. I think the rules and regulations have some changes pending the BOC about those, but we have definitely been seeing fires being left unattended there, and that's always a concern. A request for general meetings whenever there's handouts to the Parks Board. Those should be uploaded to the Natrona County Document Center in advance of the meeting so the public can also have access to those. And I think that's it.
Well, let's start with the first one. As far as the Parks Director position, the answer I have is it's all up in the air right now.
Yeah.
That is with the Board of County Commission and discussions between them and Mr. Hegler, who has taken on that role in a temporary capacity until a permanent solution has been worked out. And I can tell you from conversations I've had, I do not believe that we are going to go with the system that we've had. The last three directors have not worked out, and that is obviously unworkable.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be a new situation as far as would be the Director of Parks, and I can't really tell you what that will look like. Basically, everything is on the table.
Yeah.
And as far as communication with that, as soon as we know something, you will know something. But I do not know what that'll look like. I think the time frame, I don't know, Mike may have more information than I do, but, I mean, obviously, Mr. Hegler's not going to be able to do this forever. He's got his own department to run, and so we need to get something done. But honestly, I think at this point, everybody's of the opinion that we need to come up with a good, workable, long-term solution. Along with that, communications are a key. We've been discussing this. We had meetings amongst the board with the county commissioners as far as how are we going to get communications out to the public. We're working on that. That is a big priority.
Yeah.
And I
just a
know that
suggestion-
communications have not been good for several years. We're all super aware of that, and we want to fix that problem. But that's probably going to be concurrent with the solution that we have for the Parks Director.
Yeah, and when you're further along with that, and when the BOCC has worked up what they plan to do, some short description of this is what the structure used to be, these are the problems, this is how we think we can solve it in a new structure, that would go a long ways to explaining to the public what has been going on and how we've determined to fix it in the future.
Right. Now, as far as the decreasing amenities on the mountain, most of that circles back to the fact that we're unable to get, the old well that has been up there forever does not meet current EPA requirements for public use or for selling, commercial use of water. To comply with those requirements would be incredibly expensive. And as far as I know, there's no way that we're going to be able to bring that current well and cistern and everything up, and the water system all has to be compliant. So if we are supplying water to the public at any outlet in the campground areas, that entire system has to be EPA compliant. And to do that would just be astronomical. So I don't know, Mike, you may be able to add something to that, but I don't see that happening right away.
Well, the idea was, last year, we were trying to come into compliance with a brand-new well. And that was put on hold because of the violations we had with the system. And then winter hit, and we couldn't even get a driller to, well, we were having trouble getting a driller to even look at it. And when we finally did, the issue became more of an issue in that we really wouldn't be able to serve the public. You know, we can serve like the lodge, our gathering place, but when you start serving the public off of spigots, which are in the campgrounds now, and that's just black plastic pipe that runs to all those, and it's been patched numerous times. It was never dug in, in and on the mountain, it's hard to do. So it wasn't really a design system, it was just one that evolved. And, you know, they stopped us a number of years ago from selling water to the cabin owners up there. And that was smart. Because one reason was we gave it to the water to them in their container, and they took it to their house and put it in their cistern, and when somebody gets sick, who did it? And so that was discontinued, excuse me. And right now, we feel we can revamp our well. One of the issues is the casing isn't high enough above the ground, and the packing isn't the right packing, and the pump's been in there 20 years, so if we do all that, we'll probably put a new pump in there. That well still puts out enough water to provide water to the lodge. Our shop up there has its own well, so it's not provided water by that system. The well never kept up with the demands in the summer that the public put on it. And so it just never generated the water. So originally, we thought we could drill a deeper well, hit more water. And then when we found out what the cost of putting in another heated tank and meeting all the new regulations and the way you had to have a water operator, it's astronomical for the number of people you serve for such a short time, and then you shut everything down for the winter. And that's much like the lake, but the lake's already got that investment. And of course, the lake generates magnitude of revenue. So the thought is right now is to try and revamp our old well. And we don't know if if DEQ or EPA is going to really let us do that yet. And if that works, we would service the lodge area with that. If that doesn't work, we'd probably try to drill a well down at the lodge. So that's the thinking right now.
Thanks. So,
And then the fire rings out at Rotary Park are dependent on the rules and regulations. Once we get the parks rules and regulations in place, then we can enforce that. Right now, we can't. So, and then obviously, that'll be contingent on fire restrictions countywide too. So, there are other restrictions that may stop people from putting fires in there, but right now, as far as the county rules and regulations go, right now, we don't really have a mechanism to stop people presently, but we will, and it's coming. So, what else did you have?
the only thing was the request to have the packets for the board be posted.
Yeah, and I think that'll be, once we get our communications figured out, that will happen with that also.
Okay. Thank you all for your service. We greatly appreciate it.
Yep, thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Mary Peterson, 743 East Fifth Street. And I just have a follow-up question with Doug, that if we're going to abandon the idea of a distribution system within the campground, can some of those wells have some type of an outlet where campers could at least go and get some water jugs filled?
Well, under the guidelines we have right now in the system that we have, that answer is no.
Is it something we're planning for future?
I don't know. I can't answer that right now until we find out if our well, is certifiable. And if we did that, they require us to have such a storage capacity for such a short time. you have to give them a number of people you're going to serve, and that's a moving target. So how big do you want to build a system that doesn't make money to begin with?
Sure.
It's probably not realistic. And I will go as far as to say most of your new campers carry 60 to 80 gallons of water with them. We're seeing more and more RVs versus tents. Most people that come in tents bring their water. And we've had the argument that, well, we don't have a way of fighting fire. That system never was designed to fight fire. I mean, if you can get enough water out of it and stay there, I wouldn't want to. But that was never the intent of that system. I mean, it's an ancient system, and it runs through Bear Trap Meadow, Deer Haven, down through below the lodge. Obviously doesn't go up to Tower Hill. But to maintain it under the regulations and what we'd have to do to comply, I mean, we become a little water service, and it's just not viable financially. It's much simpler to, service the lodge, either on the well we have or a new well, and it's standalone, serves that thing and that thing only. The fire station up there has their own well and their own tanks for fire, suppression. And there was some talk of us donating our tank to them, but our tank is, if you knew what that tank was, it goes clear back to the oil field. So, I mean, and it's rotted, and they wouldn't allow you to use it anymore. It doesn't comply. So, the system is shut down right now, and probably will be until we get the well figured out.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Howard Chrisman, 3355 Garden Creek Road, and I wanted to just touch on what Doug was talking about, was the fire thing. I live right next door to the park, and on a regular basis, we're going down there to put out fires, early evening, still at night. Isn't there a ban right now on fires in that area that we can, there's no ban on it right now?
Howard, there's a fire ban on, but it allows you to have a fire in a fire ring.
Okay.
It's not a full fire ban.
Yeah, okay. I'm just hoping, and of course it's you guys' business, but I'm just hoping that we pull those pits out of there as fast as possible, because this year, the way the wind's blowing, as dry as it is, it's the only part of the mountain that hasn't burned, like everybody says, and it's going to go right up through that canyon, and we don't have a prayer. The other thing I was going to mention is today I had a really interesting conversation with a young man that was out of Oklahoma. He was riding his mountain bike, a very accomplished mountain bike rider. And very interesting because we got to talking for quite a while. In fact, he came up to my house and had some water. But I said, how, when you're from Oklahoma and you're only here for the weekend, do you find out about this stuff? Because I didn't know. And he says, well, you guys are on all the apps. And he says, here's the 3 different apps, and one of them was Trail Fortress.
MTV Trail Project,
Yeah.
several different ones. Yeah.
And they all say that this is the trail from Rotary Park all the way around, goes through Mary's place, goes through Kathy Toop's place. All of that is bicycle approved. And then they have on that app, they have a bunch of people that have commented of how great the trails are and all that stuff. I don't know how these apps get started and how that happens.
It's kind of like Wikipedia, where just anybody can add things to it.
I see. And it doesn't accommodate, it doesn't say anything about signage, it doesn't say anything about private property. And I said, I understand what you're doing. I said, there's a lot of private property up here. I didn't mention mine. I mean, I'm keeping mine open for another reason. But I said, there's a lot of private property up here. And I said, people don't want bikes on them. It's not really approved for bikes. So I'm hoping that we expedite the process of getting the rules and regulations done as soon as possible. But my whole thing is this fire. I'm just deathly afraid of it. Everybody knows what happened in '72. Everybody knows what happened on the west side. Everybody knows what happened on the east side. And this year, I don't know that I've ever seen it as dry as it is up there.
We have a fire chief and a fire marshal sitting here, so
Yeah.
these guys are pretty interested in keeping that.
Yeah, just on Sunday afternoon, we had 8 fires in the county that were significant, and we had others last week, and we had another one a couple of days ago. And, yeah, right now, the fire situation throughout the county is extremely dry. I mean, I know in Mills, we've already implemented a fire ban so that you can only have barbecue grills or something that's enclosed commercially designed, so,
Well, Doug lives right across from me off the road, and of course, and I've got a lot of trees on my property. The wind blows the southwest, so Doug's more in trouble than I am. But, you know, the big concern is, what is today? Thursday. I guess it was this weekend, Sunday maybe. I went down there with buckets of water that I carry, 5-gallon water things, and 2 of the places that I went to, the burning places, they still had ambers burning and sparks flying and stuff like that, you know, and it just, you know, so I'm over there trying to dump this stuff on there. But people aren't putting the fires out. That's the main thing. That's all I had. It was just a comment. I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else? Public comment, going once, going twice? Okay, we'll jump down to board member comments. Jim?
Mike, thanks again for stepping in.
Oh, you're welcome.
I just can't believe we're here again, but thank you for pounding on this load and leading us again. I think we're getting better communication and whatnot, so that helps the public and helps us. But thank you.
Well, that's the intent.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I think that we know that communication is important. So I know that as a board, we're working on that and getting communication to the public. It's good to hear that you're letting us know about Rotary Park and what's going on up there. It's important. I think with the bike, I like the idea of putting new trails up on the mountain. I think that we have a lot of areas up there that would be great. Ponderosa Park, I think, would be an awesome place to start trails. So, thanks.
I just want to thank you guys for your comments too. I mean, those are a lot of good questions, and a lot of those questions we don't have the answers to. I know during this transition period, I don't think any of us were expecting to be here again right now, but we do appreciate Mike for stepping up and, you know, and taking the lead on this, and you've already done a whole lot just in the short amount of time. So we do appreciate that completely. But there are a lot of questions right now, and it's going to take us a little while to figure it out. Not just the board, but all the way across the system, you know, trying to figure out what needs to be fixed, how it needs to be fixed, and what we can do in the process. But we'll just take it a day at a time. That's all we can do right now at this point in time. You know, we're just an advisory board, so we can recommend and suggest things, but that's about the limitation on what we can really do at this point in time. But I would like to see us, there's a lot of things that we need to change in our park system. And a lot of them are moving in that direction. It's just been a slow process, and I'm hoping that we can get a few things expedited here and get some things taken care of. I mean, just, at least we're moving forward on some of the stuff like the shelters up there at Bear Trap. You know, the water issue is always something that's going to be a challenge, because everybody knows there's not a whole lot of water up on the mountain, and it is tough to get, and trying to work with the EPA and DEQ to stay in compliance with that has gotten progressively harder as the years go on. Their restrictions have gotten a lot tighter as far as what you can do when you're presenting anything to the public. So it will be a challenge, whatever we do in the future. So, but I just want to thank everybody.
So I have two things that I would like to throw out here. First one is, yes, it was unexpected that we lost our Parks Director. And obviously, because of the personnel situation, we can't comment on why or how that happened, but it happened. And the main thing that I would like to say is we have some really good people here. Mike, I would like to thank you, throw my hat in there as well, saying you've done an amazing job just in the last couple of weeks getting on these projects and administrating, things that maybe have been setting for a while and just taking it on. We are not going to stand still while this process is going on. We can still move some things forward, and I think that's super important for everybody to know. Obviously, bureaucratically, parks rules and regulations, things like that, they take some time to shake out, but they will get done. The second thing I would like to just throw out is to everybody who may be watching, everybody in the room here, everything is on the table as far as how this Parks Advisory Board will look, the director, assistant to Mike, however this shakes out. This whole process is kind of up in the air right now. So if anybody out there has some suggestions for what they would like to see from this board in the future, we want to hear it because it's all on the table right now. So everything that we do as far as maybe moving to a statutory board, I mean, I'm not saying that will happen. I'm just saying that there are a lot of considerations in the air right now. So when I say that we are looking at all the options for how the development and maintenance of the parks in Natrona County will look going forward, that's all up in the air. So again, we want the public's input. We're here to hear that input. So if anybody out there has any ideas, you can go on the county website. You can put in comments there. You can contact one of us. We would be happy to entertain any ideas that you have. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And I just want to thank everybody here for everything that they've done, and thank you for your comments. And then I would ask Commissioner Kaufman, do you have anything that you would like to add before we close?
Just two quick things that I will follow up on, if we can set a date on the rules and regs stuff, and then I also will follow up after touching base with Eric on the trail building piece. So that's my commitment to you guys, and get it back to the Parks Board. And as always, I love public comments, and I appreciate the civic process. So just thanks for the people who are in the room and for everybody for your service. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, any other board members? Okay, I guess we need a motion.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Second?
Second. Okay, we are adjourned.